You knew the whole time. I knew within the first 4 seconds, the way you held the cloth. A cleaner doesn't handle fabric that way, a filmmaker does. And you let me stay. I let you stay. Shelby Gray spent 11 years learning how to disappear into a room, how to hold a camera so still that people forgot they were being watched, how to clean an office at 2 a.m. without leaving a single fingerprint on the wrong surface. None of it mattered the night Arnold Alvarez fired her in front of her entire crew for touching a desk that belonged to a man whose name she had never been told. What she did not know, what she could not have known, was that the man whose desk she touched had been watching her on the security feed for the past 6 weeks. And he had been waiting. What does it cost a woman to let herself be seen by someone who has already decided she is worth seeing? Stay with this one, because the firing is only the beginning. The desk she touched belonged to Hyungyeom Chu, a 29-year-old art dealer who runs the most prestigious private gallery in Seoul. What the world does not know is that the gallery launders stolen masterpieces for a syndicate that has been operating since before Shelby was born. What the syndicate does not know is that Shelby has 47 hours of raw documentary footage from a wedding she filmed 8 years ago. Footage that captured a conversation no one was ever supposed to hear. This story does not end the way you think it will. If this story stayed with you, drop a comment and tell me the exact moment you knew she was going to be all right. I read every one of them. If you are new here, subscribe and turn on notifications, and I promise the next story will be even harder to walk away from. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. 3 weeks before the firing, Shelby Gray walked into the lobby of the Hyungyeom building at 11:42 p.m. carrying a plastic caddy of cleaning supplies and a laminated badge that identified her as temporary staff, night shift, 19th floor. She was 31 years old, 5'6", raised in the Ville neighborhood of St. Louis, in a converted attic apartment above the beauty supply store her aunt managed. By day, she worked as a live-in governess and tutor for a diplomat's household in Hanam-dong. By night, 3 shifts a week, she cleaned offices in Pyeongchang-dong for a crew managed by a man named Arnold Alvarez. The night work was not about the money. The money helped, but the night work was about something else. It was about learning the rhythms of a building that housed on its 19th floor one of the most prestigious private galleries in Seoul. The elevator opened onto polished concrete floors and the faint chemical smell of jewelry flux. The gallery shared the 19th floor with a working jewelry workshop, and at this hour the workshop benches were empty, the torches cold, the ventilation system humming its low, continuous note. Cherry blossom petals drifted past the floor-to-ceiling windows. It was late April, and the trees in the courtyard below were shedding. Shelby set her caddy on the service cart and began her circuit. She had been a documentary filmmaker once, award-winning, before she walked away from it. Before she realized that the industry she had given 11 years to would never see her the way she needed to be seen. Now she filmed weddings, quiet ones mostly, couples who wanted something intimate and unpolished. She was good at it. She was good at disappearing into a room, at holding a camera so still that people forgot they were being watched. She was good at waiting. The night cleaning job was an extension of that skill. She moved through offices the way she moved through receptions. Present, but unnoticed. Thorough, but invisible. She emptied wastebaskets without looking at their contents. She wiped down desks without disturbing the arrangement of objects. She cleaned the glass walls of the conference rooms from the inside out, leaving no streaks, and she never, not once, touched anything that was not meant to be touched. Arnold Alvarez ran the crew with the particular authority of a man who believed his position was precarious. He was American, from somewhere in the Southwest, and he had been in Seoul for 9 years. Long enough to know the rules, but not long enough to feel secure in them. He checked badge-in times to the minute. He walked the floors during shifts, appearing in doorways without warning, watching the way a supervisor watches when he's looking for mistakes rather than progress. He carried a tablet with him at all times, and he made notes on it with a stylus, and he never told anyone what he was writing. Shelby understood him within the first week. She had known men like him her whole life. Men who protected themselves by finding someone to blame before anyone blamed them. Men who kept detailed records not because they were organized, but because documentation was a weapon, and a weapon was a comfort. She gave him nothing to write about. She arrived early. She left late. She did not talk to the other cleaners more than necessary, and she did not complain about assignments. And she did not make herself memorable in any way. That was the plan, at least. The gallery occupied the east wing of the 19th floor. Its doors were glass, frosted from the inside, and behind them hung canvases that Shelby could not see clearly but could feel the presence of. Large works. Old works. The kind of paintings that required climate control and armed guards and insurance policies written in languages she did not speak. She was not assigned to clean the gallery. That was handled by a separate service, bonded and vetted and operating under contracts she would never see. But the hallway outside the gallery was hers. The polished concrete, the single bench, marble, where visitors waited. The small anteroom with its security desk and its bank of monitors and its door that led to the workshop beyond. On her fourth shift, at 1:17 a.m., she was wiping down the security desk when she noticed the monitors. 8 feeds, different angles, the workshop, the hallway, the elevator lobby, and 1 feed that showed the interior of the gallery itself, a wide shot that captured a man standing alone in front of a painting she could not identify from this distance. He was young, late 20s. He stood with his hands in his pockets and his weight slightly forward, the posture of someone who was not admiring the painting so much as studying it, interrogating it. His suit was dark, well cut, and he wore no tie. His hair was pushed back from his forehead in a way that suggested he had been running his hands through it. She did not stop wiping the desk. She did not slow down. But she adjusted her angle, just slightly, so that she could keep the monitor in her peripheral vision for 3 more seconds. In those 3 seconds, he turned, not toward the camera, toward the door, as if he had heard something, or sensed something. His face was visible for perhaps 2 seconds. Sharp features, serious expression, eyes that seemed to be looking for something they expected to find. Then he turned back to the painting, and Shelby finished wiping the desk, and she moved on. She did not know his name yet. She would learn it later, the way she learned everything in this building, in pieces, through patience, through the accumulation of small observations that added up to a picture no one else was assembling. His name was Hyungyeom Chu. He was 29 years old. He ran the gallery, and he had been watching her on the security feed for the past 6 weeks. What she did not understand, what she could not have understood in those first weeks, was that the watching had begun before she ever walked into the building. Hyungyeom Chu had access to the hiring records for every service company that operated on his floor. He reviewed them personally, he was paranoid, and he was controlling, but those weren't the reasons. He reviewed them because the gallery he ran was not just a gallery, it was a cleaning operation of a different kind. And every new face that passed through his floor was a potential exposure. Shelby Gray's file had landed on his desk 6 days before her first shift. Her photograph. Her work history. The gap of several years where she had been, according to the paperwork, self-employed in the film industry. The note from Arnold Alvarez that she was reliable, quiet, and would cause no problems. Hyungyeom had looked at her photograph for 11 seconds. Then he had approved the assignment. He did not know why. Or rather, he knew why. But the knowledge was not comfortable. And so, he set it aside the way he set aside most things that made him uncomfortable. He filed it. He moved on. He did not think about it again until the night she stood at his security desk, cloth in hand, and adjusted her angle by 3 degrees to keep the monitor in view. A cleaner does not adjust angles. A cleaner finishes the task and moves on. But a filmmaker, a person who has spent years learning how to capture a frame without disturbing it. A person who understands that sometimes the most important information is at the edge of what you are pretending to look at. That person adjusts angles. He watched her finish the desk. He watched her move on. He rewound the footage and watched it again. The precision of her movements. The economy. The way her hands held the cloth, not with the grip of someone trying to get a job done, but with the grip of someone who understood that touch was information. He did not say anything to Arnold Alvarez. He did not flag her file. He did not do any of the things he should have done if he believed she was a threat. He just watched. That became the pattern over the next several days. Shelby cleaned. Hyungyeom watched. Neither of them acknowledged the other's existence in any direct way. But the awareness was there. A frequency neither of them had asked to tune into. Arnold Alvarez noticed nothing. Arnold Alvarez was busy protecting himself from imagined threats, and a quiet cleaner who arrived early and left late and gave him nothing to write about was not worth his attention. He had other concerns. There had been a complaint from the jewelry workshop about fingerprints on one of the display cases. There had been a question from building management about overtime hours. There had been a rumor, which he could not trace, that someone on his crew was stealing supplies. He needed someone to blame. Not yet, but soon. The pressure was building in that particular way it always built when Arnold Alvarez felt his position becoming precarious. Shelby felt it too. The shift in his attention. The way he started appearing in hallways where he had no reason to be. The way he started checking her work more closely, running a finger along surfaces she had already wiped, examining wastebaskets she had already emptied. She gave him nothing. She was careful. She was thorough. She was invisible in all the ways that should have protected her. But on the night of April 27th, at 2:14 a.m., she made a mistake. Or rather, Arnold Alvarez decided that she had made a mistake, which amounted to the same thing. She was cleaning the anteroom outside the gallery. The security desk, the monitors, the small table beside the door that led to the workshop. On that table sat a leather portfolio, closed, with a brass clasp. She did not touch it. She wiped around it, as she had been trained, and she moved on. But Arnold Alvarez was watching. He had positioned himself in the hallway, tablet in hand, stylus ready. And when she finished the anteroom and moved toward the workshop, he stepped into her path. "You touched the desk." She stopped. "I wiped the desk." "That's my job." "Not that desk." He pointed back toward the anteroom. "His desk. Mr. Chu's desk. I saw you." "I wiped the surface. I didn't move anything." "You touched the portfolio." She had not touched the portfolio. She knew this with absolute certainty because she had spent 11 years learning how to be certain about exactly this kind of thing. But Arnold Alvarez did not need certainty. He needed someone to blame. "I didn't touch it," she said. Quiet, steady. The way she had learned to speak when someone was trying to make her louder. "I'm writing it up." He made a note on his tablet. "This is a restricted area. Mr. Chu's personal effects are not to be handled by night staff under any circumstances." "I understand. I didn't handle them." He looked at her then. Really looked. And she saw in his face the particular expression of a man who has found what he was looking for, whether it existed or not. "Pack up your cart," he said. "You're done for tonight." She did not argue. She did not explain. She packed up her cart and took the elevator down and walked out into the April night, cherry blossoms drifting past her face like small pale accusations. She had 47 hours of raw documentary footage on a hard drive in her apartment. Footage from a wedding she had filmed 8 years ago. Footage that contained a conversation she had not understood at the time, but understood now. She had not come to this building to clean offices. She had come to confirm something. to get close enough to see whether the patterns she had been tracing for years actually led where she thought they led. And now Arnold Alvarez had given her exactly what she needed, a reason to come back. The night after Arnold Alvarez sent her home, Shelby returned, not to clean, not through the main entrance. She came back because she needed to understand the geography of the 19th floor in a way that her 3 weeks of cleaning had not allowed her to understand. She needed to know where the doors led, where the sound carried, where a person could stand and not be seen while still being close enough to hear. She had learned, over 11 years of documentary work, that the most important information was almost never in the center of the frame. It was at the edges, in the background. In the spaces people forgot to guard because they were too busy guarding the obvious things. The Hyungyeom building had a service stairwell that ran the full height of the structure. She had used it twice during her shifts, carrying trash bags to the compactor on the basement level. The stairwell was not monitored. The cameras covered the elevator lobby, the main hallways, the entrances to the gallery and the workshop. But the stairwell was considered maintenance infrastructure, and maintenance infrastructure was invisible. She climbed 18 flights at 1:33 a.m., moving slowly, keeping her footsteps soft. The door to the 19th floor had a small window, wire-reinforced glass, and through it she could see the polished concrete of the hallway and the edge of the marble bench where visitors waited. She did not go through the door. She had not come to be seen. She had come to watch. Through the window, at an angle that required her to press her shoulder against the cold metal of the doorframe, she could see the anteroom, the security desk, the bank of monitors. And beyond them, through the frosted glass doors of the gallery, the faint suggestion of movement. Someone was inside. At 1:47 a.m. on a Tuesday night, someone was moving through the gallery with the unhurried confidence of a person who belonged there. She adjusted her position by 2 inches. The movement brought the monitors into clearer view. She could see the feed now, the same 8 angles she had memorized during her shifts. And on one of them, the interior shot, she could see Hyungyeom Chu standing in front of a painting she did not recognize. He was not looking at it the way he had been looking the first time she saw him. He was looking at it the way a person looks at something they are about to lose. His hands were not in his pockets. They were at his sides, fingers slightly curled, and his shoulders carried a tension she could read even through the grainy feed of a security camera. She watched him for 11 minutes. In those 11 minutes, he did not move. He did not check his phone. He did not speak to anyone. He simply stood in front of the painting with the particular stillness of a man who was waiting for something he knew would not come. Then he turned, not toward the door, toward the painting itself. He stepped closer, close enough that he could have touched it if he raised his hand, and he stood there for another 3 minutes with his head slightly bowed. It was a posture she recognized. She had filmed it 100 times at funerals, at hospital bedsides, at the moments when people finally allowed themselves to feel what they had been holding back. She did not understand what she was seeing. She filed it with the other things she did not understand and withdrew from the window and descended the 18 flights back to the street. The next 3 days, Arnold Alvarez did not contact her. She went to her governess job. She taught the diplomat's niece how to conjugate French verbs and how to calculate compound interest and how to recognize when someone was lying to her by watching their hands instead of their eyes. She ate dinner alone in the small room the household provided for her, and she thought about the footage on the hard drive in her apartment, and she waited. On the 4th day, Arnold Alvarez called. "I spoke with Mr. Chu," he said. His voice carried the particular satisfaction of a man who believed he had won something. "He reviewed the security footage personally. He confirmed that you touched the portfolio." Shelby held the phone 6 inches from her ear. She did not speak. "Given the sensitive nature of the materials in that area, your assignment to the 19th floor is terminated effective immediately. You can pick up your final paycheck at the service office on Friday." She waited 4 seconds before responding, long enough that he would wonder whether she was still on the line. "I understand," she said. and she ended the call. She had not touched the portfolio. She knew this. She also knew that Hyungyeom Chu had access to the security footage, and that the security footage would show, with perfect clarity, that she had not touched the portfolio. Which meant one of two things. Either Arnold Alvarez was lying about what Hyungyeom Chu had said, or Hyungyeom Chu had chosen to confirm a lie for reasons she did not yet understand. Neither possibility was reassuring. Both were useful. She went to the service office on Friday, not to pick up her paycheck. To be seen picking up her paycheck. Arnold Alvarez was there, which she had expected. He was standing near the door, tablet in hand, and when she walked in, he straightened slightly, the way a person straightens when they want to appear taller than they are. "Shelby Gray," he said, loud enough that the 4 other cleaners in the room could hear. "Here to collect?" She approached the desk. The woman behind it, whose name Shelby had never learned, handed her an envelope without meeting her eyes. "You know," Arnold said, "I tried to give you a chance. I really did. But some people just can't follow simple instructions." She counted the money in the envelope, 340,000 won, correct to the last bill. "I reviewed your file before I recommended you for that floor," he continued. "I thought this one looks reliable. This one looks like she understands how things work around here." The other cleaners were watching. 2 of them she had worked with. One of them, a woman named Sun-hee, had shared a thermos of barley tea with her during a break 3 weeks ago. "But I guess I was wrong." Arnold shook his head, the gesture of a man performing disappointment. "Touching things that don't belong to you. Looking at screens you have no business looking at. You think nobody notices? You think Mr. Chu doesn't have eyes everywhere in that building?" She folded the envelope and put it in her pocket. "You're lucky I didn't report you to building security," he said. "You're lucky all I did was terminate your assignment." Sun-hee looked away. The other cleaners looked at the floor. Arnold Alvarez smiled, and the smile said everything about what this moment meant to him. "I understand," Shelby said. Quiet, steady, the same 2 words she had used on the phone. She turned and walked out. What Arnold Alvarez did not know, what he could not have known, was that Shelby had been waiting for exactly this moment. Not the humiliation, not the public dismissal, but the confirmation that Hyungyeom Chu was watching. That Hyungyeom Chu had been given a choice between truth and convenience, and he had chosen convenience. Which meant Hyungyeom Chu had something to protect. Something more important than the reputation of a temporary cleaner. Something that made him willing to confirm a lie told by a man he almost certainly did not respect. She returned to the Hyungyeom building that night. Same service stairwell, same 18 flights, same wire-reinforced window. But this time, the anteroom was not empty. Hyungyeom Chu was standing at the security desk. He was looking at the monitors, his back to the hallway, and he was speaking to someone she could not see. His voice was low, and the door was closed, and she could not hear what he was saying, but she could hear the other voice, thin, nasal, coming from somewhere to his right, beyond the edge of her sightline. "The shipment arrives Thursday," the voice said. "Rotterdam to Busan. The documentation is already in place." "And the provenance? Clean. 3 intermediaries, nothing traceable to the original collection." Hyungyeom was silent for 4 seconds. Then, "The original owner?" "Deceased. Family scattered. No one to file a claim." Another silence. Longer this time. Shelby pressed her shoulder harder against the doorframe, trying to extend her angle, trying to see who was speaking. "All right," Hyungyeom said. And the way he said it, the flatness, the lack of resistance, told her everything about how many times he had said it before. She withdrew from the window. She descended the stairs. She walked into the April night, and she did not look back. She understood now. The gallery. The stolen masterpieces. The syndicate that had been operating since before she was born. She had spent 2 years tracing the edges of this network, following threads that led from St. Louis to Chicago to Amsterdam to Seoul. and now she was standing at the center of it, and the man at the center was not the villain she had expected to find. He was something worse. He was someone who knew exactly what he was doing and did it anyway. The footage on her hard drive was from a wedding in Atlanta 8 years ago. A society wedding. Old money marrying new money, and Shelby had been hired to capture the reception, the toasts, the quiet moments between the formal photographs. She had filmed for 16 hours across 2 days, and most of that footage was unremarkable. But there was one conversation. Background audio. 2 men at the edge of the dance floor, champagne flutes in hand, speaking just loudly enough to be picked up by her directional microphone. She had not understood what they were discussing at the time. She had not listened closely. She had been focused on the bride's grandmother, who was crying softly in a corner, and the audio had been incidental. 3 years later, when she started tracing the network, she had gone back through her archives. Thousands of hours of footage from hundreds of weddings. And she had found the conversation. The 2 men had been discussing a shipment, a painting, a collection that had been seized from a family in Berlin in 1943 and never recovered. One of the men had mentioned a gallery in Seoul. He had mentioned a name, Chu, not Hyungyeom, his father. But the gallery was the same gallery, the network was the same network. And the shipment they had been discussing 8 years ago was part of a pattern that stretched back decades. Shelby had 47 hours of raw footage from that wedding. The conversation was buried somewhere in the middle, unindexed, unmarked. She had listened to it once. She had made a note of the timestamp. And then she had waited. She had not come to Seoul to expose the network. She had not come to take down the gallery. She had come because she needed to understand the scope of what she was dealing with before she decided what to do about it. But now Arnold Alvarez had forced her hand. And Hyungyeom Chu had confirmed a lie about her, which meant he saw her as a threat, which meant he was watching her more closely than she had realized. She needed to get back inside the building, not as a cleaner, as something else. The diplomat she worked for had connections. Everyone in Hanam-dong had connections. It was the nature of the neighborhood, the way money and influence pooled in certain zip codes and refused to disperse. She had been careful not to use those connections, not to draw attention to herself, not to ask for favors that would need to be repaid. But she was running out of options. On Monday morning, she asked the diplomat's wife if she knew anyone who collected art. Art? The woman looked up from her breakfast. What kind of art? I'm not sure. I've been thinking about starting a small collection. Something to invest in. The woman smiled. You should talk to my husband's colleague at the Trade Ministry. He knows everyone in that world. He can probably get you into some of the private galleries. Private galleries? The really exclusive ones. The ones where they don't let just anyone walk in. The woman buttered her toast with precise economical strokes. There's one in Pyeongchang-dong that's supposed to be extraordinary. I've never been, but I've heard the collection is unlike anything else in the country. Shelby nodded. I'd love an introduction. I'll mention it to my husband. That evening, the diplomat came to Shelby's room. He was a careful man, formal in his manners, and he knocked twice before entering, even though the door was open. My wife says you're interested in art, he said. I am. I can arrange a visit to the Chu Gallery, a private viewing, but I should tell you. He paused, choosing his words. The young man who runs it is not like other dealers. He sees things that other people miss. If you're trying to hide something from him, I would advise against going. Shelby looked at him. What makes you think I'm hiding something? The diplomat smiled. It was a sad smile. The smile of a man who had spent 30 years watching people pretend to be things they were not. Everyone is hiding something, he said. The question is whether it's worth being seen. He left her alone with that thought. 3 days later, she received an invitation to the Chu Gallery. A private viewing, Thursday evening, 7 o'clock. She stood in her room, holding the card, and she thought about the footage on her hard drive. about the conversation she had captured 8 years ago, about the man she had watched standing in front of a painting at 1:47 a.m. with the posture of someone saying goodbye. She thought about Arnold Alvarez, who had fired her in front of her entire crew for a lie he had invented to protect himself. She thought about what it would cost her to walk into that gallery and let Hyungyeom Chu see exactly who she was. And then she started planning what to wear. Thursday evening, 7 o'clock. Cherry blossoms drifting past the windows of the Hwangryong building like something out of a film she might have made once, in another life. Shelby arrived at the gallery 14 minutes early. She wore a black dress she had bought in Atlanta 9 years ago for a premiere she never attended, and she carried a small clutch that contained her phone, her identification, and a flash drive with 17 minutes of audio extracted from her 47 hours of footage. The audio was a backup. She did not intend to use it unless she had no other choice. The gallery doors were open. A woman in a gray suit stood behind a small reception desk, and she checked Shelby's name against a list and nodded toward the main exhibition space without speaking. The paintings were extraordinary. She had expected them to be extraordinary, but the reality of standing in front of them was different from the expectation. A Vermeer. A small Rembrandt drawing. 3 Dutch masters she could not immediately identify, but whose brushwork she recognized from museum catalogs she had studied as a teenager in the Ville, when she still believed that the world of art was something she could enter through the front door. She moved through the space slowly, the way a person moves when they are being watched and know it. She did not look for cameras. She did not scan the room for surveillance points. She simply walked and looked and waited for whatever was going to happen next. At 7:23 p.m., a door opened at the far end of the gallery. Hyungyeom Chu stepped through it. He was wearing the same kind of dark suit she had seen on the security monitors, and his hair was pushed back from his forehead in the same way, and his eyes found her across the room with the particular focus of someone who had been waiting for this moment longer than she had. "Miss Gray," he said, "thank you for coming." She did not move toward him. She let him come to her. He stopped 6 feet away, close enough to speak without raising his voice, far enough that she could not read the details of his expression. "The diplomat told me you were interested in starting a collection," he said. "He told me you see things other people miss." Did he? It was not a question. "He also told me I should be careful about what I was hiding." Hyungyeom was silent for 3 seconds. Then, "And what are you hiding, Miss Gray?" She turned back to the Vermeer, a woman at a window, reading a letter, the light falling across her face in a way that made the room around her seem to disappear. "I spent 11 years learning how to disappear into a room," she said. "How to hold a camera so still that people forgot they were being watched. How to capture conversations that no one knew were being recorded." She felt him go still beside her. The particular stillness of a man who is recalculating. "I know about the shipments," she said. "I know about the Rotterdam connection. I know about the families whose collections were stolen and never recovered." "That's quite an accusation." "It's not an accusation. It's an observation." She turned to face him. "I also know that you stand in front of these paintings at 2 a.m. with the posture of someone who is grieving, which suggests to me that whatever your role in this network is, it's not the role you would have chosen." He did not respond. His face remained perfectly composed, the way a face remains composed when the person behind it has spent years learning how to reveal nothing. "I have footage," she said, "from a wedding in Atlanta 8 years ago. A conversation between 2 men discussing a shipment. A painting. A collection seized from a family in Berlin in 1943. One of them mentioned your father. My father is dead. I know. I also know the gallery continued operating under the same arrangement after he died, which means you inherited more than the collection." The silence between them stretched. Through the windows, cherry blossoms continued to drift past, indifferent to whatever was happening inside. "Why are you telling me this?" he said finally. "If you have evidence, why not take it to the authorities? Why come here?" because I want to understand something first. What? Whether you're someone who can be reasoned with, or whether you're someone who needs to be destroyed. His expression shifted by a fraction. Not surprise. Something closer to recognition. And what have you decided? Before she could answer, the door at the far end of the gallery opened again. Arnold Alvarez walked through it. He was carrying his tablet, stylus in hand, and he was speaking to someone behind him. His voice carried across the exhibition space with the particular volume of a man who believed he was not being overheard. I told you, the situation is handled. The cleaner is gone. She doesn't know anything, and even if she did, who would believe her? A temp worker from the night shift making accusations against the Chu gallery? He laughed. The sound was sharp and unpleasant. She touched the portfolio. I said, she touched the portfolio. Mr. Chu confirmed she touched the portfolio. Case closed. No one is going to look twice at some black American woman who got fired for not following procedures. Shelby did not move. She stood beside the Vermeer with her hands at her sides and watched Arnold Alvarez notice her. His face changed. The confidence drained out of it like water through a crack. Miss Gray, he said. I didn't realize you were. Clearly. Hyungyeom stepped forward. His voice was quiet, the way a voice is quiet when it does not need to be loud to be heard. Arnold, he said, tell me again what you told building security about the portfolio incident. Arnold's eyes moved between them, calculating, trying to find the angle that would protect him. I told them what I saw, he said. She touched the portfolio. She was looking at screens she had no business looking at. I reported it, just like I'm supposed to. And did you tell them that I confirmed her actions? That I reviewed the footage personally? A pause. You said you reviewed it, you said. I said I would review it. I never said I confirmed your version of events. Hyungyeom's voice remained steady. The footage shows Miss Gray wiping the desk surface. She did not touch the portfolio. She did not access any restricted materials. Your report was false. Arnold's face went white. I thought. You approved the termination. I assumed. You assumed I would cover for you because covering for people is what I do. Hyungyeom turned to look at Shelby. Miss Gray, I owe you an apology. I allowed Mr. Alvarez's report to stand because I was preoccupied with other matters. That was a failure on my part. She looked at him, then at Arnold, then back at him. I don't want an apology, she said. What do you want? She thought about the footage on the flash drive in her clutch. The 17 minutes of audio that could bring down not just Arnold Alvarez, but the entire network. The evidence that could expose decades of stolen art, laundered money, destroyed families. She thought about what it would feel like to hand that evidence to the authorities and watch everything burn. And she thought about the man standing in front of the painting at 1:47 a.m. with the posture of someone saying goodbye. I want him fired, she said, through proper channels, an investigation, a formal review. I want the other cleaners on that crew to know that when someone lies about them, there are consequences. Real consequences, not manufactured ones. Arnold made a sound. Something between protest and disbelief. And the footage? Hyungyeom asked. His voice was careful now, measuring. The footage goes to the proper authorities, not to the tabloids, not to the internet, to the people who are supposed to handle this kind of thing. She met his eyes. I didn't come here to destroy you, Mr. Chu. I came here to understand whether you were worth saving. And what did you decide? She looked at him for a long moment, at the careful composure of his face, at the tension in his shoulders that she could read even through the expensive fabric of his suit. I decided that some debts can't be repaid through destruction. They can only be repaid through change. Arnold Alvarez was still standing by the door, his tablet clutched against his chest, his face the color of old paper. This isn't. You can't just... He looked at Hyungyeom. You're going to let her dictate terms? She's a cleaner. She's nobody. Hyungyeom turned to face him. The movement was slow and deliberate, the way a person moves when they want the other person to have time to understand what is about to happen. Miss Gray is a former documentary filmmaker with 47 hours of footage that could destroy everything this gallery has built over 4 decades, he said. She is also, as of this moment, the person who will be overseeing the restructuring of our security and personnel protocols. Arnold's mouth opened, closed. You're fired, Arnold. Effective immediately. Building security will escort you out. Hyungyeom's voice remained perfectly level. And when the investigation is complete and the authorities have whatever they need from Miss Gray's archives, you will face whatever consequences the legal system determines are appropriate. You can't do this. You can't just... I already have. 2 security guards appeared in the doorway behind Arnold. They took his arms, gently but firmly, and he was still protesting as they led him away. The gallery was quiet after he was gone, just Shelby and Hyungyeom and the paintings that had been stolen from people who loved them. You could have destroyed me too, he said. Why didn't you? She looked at the Vermeer, the woman at the window, the letter in her hands. Because I've spent 11 years learning how to see what's really in front of me, she said. And what I see is someone who inherited a weight he didn't ask for and doesn't know how to put down. And you think you can help me put it down? I think the only person who can put it down is you. But I can make sure you don't have to carry it alone. He was silent for a long time. The cherry blossoms continued to drift past the windows, and somewhere in the building, Arnold Alvarez was being escorted out, and somewhere in Shelby's clutch, a flash drive held the evidence that would reshape both their lives. Monday, Hyungyeom said finally. Come back Monday morning, 9 o'clock. I'll have the paperwork ready. Paperwork for what? He turned to look at her. His face was still careful, still composed, but there was something in his eyes that had not been there before. For your new position, he said. Someone has to sign the paychecks around here, and I think you've proven you're qualified. 6 months later, on a Tuesday morning in October, Shelby stood at the window of the 19th floor and watched the city wake up beneath her. The cherry blossoms were long gone. The trees in the courtyard had turned copper and rust, and the light that fell through the glass was thinner now, sharper, the way light gets when the year begins to close. Hyungyeom came to stand beside her. He did not speak. He simply stood there, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him through his sleeve, and they watched the traffic move along the street below. The Rotterdam shipment arrived yesterday, she said. The provenance documentation checked out. All legitimate this time. All legitimate, he agreed. She turned to look at him. His face was calmer than it had been 6 months ago. The tension she had learned to read through expensive fabric had loosened, not completely, but enough. He slept now. She knew this because she had seen him sleep, his breath steady, his hands uncurled, the weight of 40 years of inherited guilt finally beginning to lift. You could have chosen differently, she said, when I gave you the evidence. You could have tried to bury it. I could have. He turned to face her. But you already knew I wouldn't. How did I know that? He smiled. It was a small smile, the kind that lived mostly in the corners of his eyes. Because you spent 6 weeks watching me stand in front of paintings that didn't belong to me. And you saw what that cost. She had seen. She had always seen. His hand found hers. The touch was careful, precise. The way he did everything. His thumb traced a line across her knuckles. And he held her gaze while he did it. And neither of them looked away. She had learned that dignity was not the same as distance. She had learned that being seen was not the same as being exposed. She had learned that some debts could only be repaid through change, and that change was slow, and that slow was not the same as impossible. The light through the window turned gold. The city moved beneath them. And Shelby Gray stood beside a man who had inherited a weight he never asked for and was finally, carefully, learning how to put it down. If this story meant something to you, drop a comment and tell me the exact moment you knew Hyungyeom was going to choose her over the network. I read every one of them. If you are new here, subscribe and turn on notifications. And I promise the next story will be even harder to walk away from. Thank you for watching until the very end. I will see you in the next one.